What is up, you guys? It is your girl, Kayla Shay, and I'm so excited because it's been way too long, but we are back in the studio. Y'all, what? I need like a But I'm here today with two amazing people. We're gonna go and dig and dive all up into their lives, alrighty? We got Sean, and we got Nate. What's up? How you guys feeling today?
Good. Relaxed on a Sunday, just hanging out.
Yes. You know, I feel like Sundays are like the most peaceful days for me, you know? And I'm just like, this is my day to just relax. Besides today, because I have like a shit ton of indie vids to do today.
But we're interview number one though, right?
Number one, the best one, let's get it. So tell me, what are some places that you guys had worked at throughout your careers? Like, what are the one of the best places that you have done?
I'll start. So currently I'm the deputy editor of Calendar, so arts and entertainment at the LA Times. Been there for about 6 months. Interviewed David, or talked to David before we did like a story on the gallery.
Right.
And that's kind of how we met. And I've been a journalist for about 15 years. So before that, I was at the Wrap, which is like a industry trade publication, like Variety, Hollywood Reporter, basically.
Yeah.
And then I was at OC Weekly, that's my roots are in Orange County. So I was a music editor for about 8 years. And then actually before that, I was at the LA Times like 10 years ago. So it's like a full circle.
Like as an intern or?
I was a staff writer, so that's kind of So coming back recently was cool. Doing a lot of good things. Got some new management. Got Kevin Merida, who's our new executive editor. So he definitely enticed me to come to the paper and do some things. So,
This guy is legendary. Look at him. What? Well, go on ahead, Mr. Sean.
I have a background in architecture, so I had a lot of architecture jobs before I really stepped into my main passion, my main vocation, which is writing. And as a writer, career-wise, I started off at a publication called Archinect. And that's where we had a feature story on David in the gallery in Archinect. And from there, I'm not there as a staff writer anymore. I work as a communications director at Woodbury University in Burbank. And I also teach in the architecture school there, but I also do writing more freelance now. So I really see myself as a writer who works in a lot of domains, or writes for a lot of people. I might work with David or work at the university or do a piece for Dwell magazine or Archinect.
Okay, see, I thought like you have to have like a residency somewhere, and then once you're finished with that contract, then you branch off to other companies.
So some setups I think work that way.
Okay.
I think I was trying to step away from being
enclosed
because I didn't want assignments. Mainly, I wanted to be able
to do your own thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But congratulations to you for being able to just do what you want, and be like free and have that freedom, and to
cool.
control what you want to work and how you want to work. That's awesome. I like that. Okay, so do you guys ever have writer's block?
I have it all the time in conversations, like right now, when I'm trying to figure out how to answer that question. But every day, there is that struggle. I think you start out on a story, like how am I gonna do this? And I think everyone has it. It's just a question of how long you allow yourself to put up with it.
Okay.
So you can have it, but then it's like, for people like us who do this all the time, it's like, okay, well, just start. How do I just start going, and then it kind of goes away. And then a lot of times you just don't have the luxury of being like, I'm just not going to do it today. Like if you have a deadline, it's got to get done.
No, you had no choice.
It may be different if you have a long project where it's no one's checking for you for months at a time or whatever. But on the daily or on a weekly whatever grind, you have to do it. So that's kind of how I get rid of my writer's block, is by being a journalist, to be honest with you.
I think
deadlines.
I think similarly.
Yeah.
When there's a deadline, so you want that paycheck, you need to write to get that thing written.
Give me that money, honey.
I don't know. Writer's block to me, writer's block I think is the name we all call it, but I think that's just an obstacle in the creative process. So for me, I'm just like, hey, look, I don't know where to go now. And so as you gain experience as a writer, there's a number of things that I can do. I can just do like a free writing thing and just start going and go back and edit. I can go for a walk. But for me, it's like, how do I address this obstacle in the process? Because I know it's inevitable that I'm going to have a piece and that I'm going to, over time, make it good.
Right.
Yeah, so for me, it's just like, how do I tackle this? So it's a little harder than if it was just all flowing and coming to me, maybe.
See, I feel like that's just easier said than doing, because I feel like I get writer's block sometimes. I'm not a writer, but I'm just saying when I have to write something, I'm like, think, but I can't think. I don't know why. What is it? I'll go back and I'll refresh my wordings and what you guys said, because I don't know, man. So when it comes down to being diverse in the writer's industry, why is that so important?
I mean, otherwise you're gonna wind up with a lot of whack articles, to be honest with you. Like that's a big reason why I think there's been a push, like not just with the LA Times, but with a lot more news outlets. I mean, some are doing better than others in terms of diversifying the newsroom and putting people in not only like writer positions, but also editor positions and areas like when you're talking about photo and video, because all these different ideas constitute journalism. So everyone can be a journalist. Like you're a social media editor, you're a journalist. Yeah. You know, that's where
I can't even come up with a caption.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna hit you guys.
The hardest thing you can do sometimes is come up with one line to like sum up an entire story or like a headline. You know, it seems like, oh, that's a short, like that's like the least work, but honestly, it's very difficult sometimes.
It is difficult.
So, but in terms of diversity, back to your question, like having all these perspectives, especially in a place like LA where it's super diverse, or any major city, it's super diverse. You gotta have an outlet that sort of tries at least to match what's out there in terms of the community. So if you're not doing that, you're kind of like just ignoring your readers, and then they are not going to pay attention to you anymore.
Right. And yourself?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think a lot of people turn to writing as a kind of to see what reality is like. Like I think part of the role of like a lot of the writing I do is like long form narrative or storytelling, or kind of like in the literary form. So like in this piece, like I'll just use a piece on David. Like David is the protagonist; he's the main character, and I think being a black man, there's a certain lens that I can look into David's story that maybe someone that doesn't have some of the parallels that we experience. I mean, our lives are completely completely unique, but there are similarities that I think are questions that I might know to ask or try to capture that someone else might not. That could write a great profile, no doubt, but maybe little nuances and things.
Right.
So I just think the role of the writer is to try to render real life to the reader. And if you just have one kind of group, whatever that may be, ethnic or otherwise, you get a very one-dimensional lens on reality. Yeah. And not a kind of diverse.
Get it. What are some of your favorite books that you guys like to read? What, as a writer, does that go hand in hand, just you loving books, or is that just something that we all assume?
I mean,
you can go.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe we'll change up the pattern.
Switch it up.
I mean, books are a big part of my life.
Okay. So I was right to assume.
I don't know how anyone can be a good writer without reading a lot. Because how can you know if what you're writing is good, if it's horrible?
True.
I mean, in my opinion, I mean, when I'm working with students, I feel like I can tell students who don't read much. And just aside from writing, just to expand one's mind. I mean, for favorite books, I mean, a lot of people have this as their favorite book, but one of my favorite novels is Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. That's a book that I always turn to, that I love.
Why?
It's about, so Ralph Ellison was kind of around in the Harlem Renaissance. The book is about a young black guy who's kind of trying to find out who he is in his life. And so he had, like, the whole first half is him trying to be who he believes everybody wants him to be. And kind of the arc in the book is him finally kind of coming into himself and just the
So you can relate, huh?
I mean, I think that's what you would call it, the typical coming of age story.
Okay.
You know, so it's kind of like that's a similar arc, but
Yeah.
as a writer, the way the lyrical prose of it and the way it's written, there's a certain jazziness to it. This guy, the guy that wrote it, went to Tuskegee for jazz. He started off as a writer, and then he became friends with like writers like Richard Wright and James Baldwin and people in the Harlem Renaissance. So there's a certain flavor to the book that I enjoy.
Spicy.
Yeah.
Yourself.
I read books. I'm more consuming a lot of like long form articles and stuff like that, just because I'm always, I don't know, just being in that world more. I'm just more like an article reader versus like book reader. But there are plenty of books that to me are like symbolize what I really like about that medium. Some of them are involved like being like a collection of great articles. Like one of my mentors is a writer named Mike Sager. He wrote a book called Scary Monsters and Super Freaks, which was like a collection of like all his work. And one of the great stories that really made him was like, doing a profile on Rick James and like showing all of like the craziness of his, at that point in his life in the 80s. And like, he spent time like embedded in like a crack gang. And, like he's like, visited like a 600-pound man, did a profile on him. It's like, all these different kinds of stories that kind of coalesce into one kind of thing, which is reality is crazier than fiction. And that's where most of like the books that I read are like either biographies or more historical, just because, I grew up with my dad he taught Black Studies, and so he always gave me like those type of books, and it really kind of made me like it gave me sort of something to relate to that maybe wasn't in my immediate surroundings, like growing up in Orange County. So I kind of wanted like a little bit of that more like historical stuff, and that kind of stuck with me. So but yeah, that's, I don't know. I read a lot, but like it's kind of more on the article side.
Right. Gotcha. That's pretty dope. So what got you guys into journalism in the first place?
I really was bad at math and science. I was like, if I'm going to take home these C's, I got to at least have a couple A's.
Yeah, something.
So my parents will stay off me. So I was fortunate to have like some good teachers in the English side of things in like 6th and 7th grade that got me like interested in it. And then you have that little bit of talent and you just kind of keep developing it, keep just, adding and building onto it. And that was like sort of the writing part of it. But then when it came to like journalism, like writing about reality or like reporting, like I think having an attraction to like just going where the action is. Like it's there's so many different kinds of writing. Right. And some of it's more contemplative and more self-reflective. Some of it's more like super like breaking news type stuff where you're like in the middle of like all these like crazy situations. And then there's a lot in between, but for me it was really getting up close, like you were saying, to like study people and kind of get to know people and like learn more about people, and in the process you find more about yourself. So it's kind of like it's homework, but it's like self-work. That's what I like it.
Okay. And yourself?
I think I felt like compelled to write. Like kind of like one is like, I don't know, almost like you're kind of like compelled to just start walking as a person. Like for me, writing is just something that I just was drawn to and just started doing. And I mean, journalism is one form that I write in, but I'm also working on fiction, and I also love the essay form, which can have some of that reflective aspects that Nate was talking about, or maybe where I'm giving commentary on something, whether it's in like an art piece or a building or a movie or whatever it is. So I think for me, it was just always something that I felt compelled to, and the same thing in school. Like that was always where I did better. I was horrible in math as well. and the sciences were interesting to me. And I think for the movie, just because we were learning about scientists and people. So it was like, the history was interesting to me, not the actual solving of formulas. So there's just like an aptitude, I think, of words and language that I appreciated.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Sean, you wrote a piece about the gallery 90220, yes?
Yes.
Tell me, what was your feedback?
Like in what sense?
Like from the people, like did people read it? Did they look at it? They appreciate it? They're like, hey, I like this, I like that. You did that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the feedback was really good. I think I'm gonna try to keep this short because a lot went into right now. Because it was written in an architectural platform, there's a certain type of writing in that space. I deliberately wrote that. I basically had like a new long form, like New Yorker article in mind. Like that's what I was trying to do. Because I feel like so much architectural writing is. And the walls are white, and it's this amount of square foot, and there's brick, and I was just like, this is not what architecture is only about. Architecture is about the people that were involved in creating the space, what this space is gonna do for the future, what it means in the past, and so I was trying to capture that. So yeah, the feedback was good. Yeah, I haven't heard any. I mean, there's always somebody who doesn't like. Something.
See, listen, if you ain't got no haters, you ain't popping. And I'm sure you popping, okay?
It's great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
Okay, so Nate, what is new at the LA Times?
Hey, you want a short answer to that question?
Yes, I want to.
A lot?
Yes. What's new?
A lot
Tell me
is
what's
happening.
new. Tell me what's new. After that, I want you to tell me, what do you do there? Tell me what's new. What do you do there? Go.
Okay. Well, to start, what's new is like we over the last couple of years we've had a new owner, as some people know. We have Dr. Patrick Shion Song, who's local businessman, entrepreneur, crazy like mind. In terms of like just somebody who really has his hand in all kinds of things, but is really invested at this moment in journalism and the LA Times, which I'm really grateful for.
Dope.
We have a new editor, executive editor, Kevin Merida, who, he has been like really leading the charge and like bringing a lot of new elements, and like restructuring the way the newsrooms work, especially in this time when we're like, still remote, but kind of easing back into like office stuff. We're but more than that, we're building onto like our audio, like podcast department, video. We got our image, like fashion style magazine that we've built out. I got hired, back, last summer as a deputy editor, and what that job mostly entails is coordinating multiple teams on the entertainment beat. So I have my set of like teams, like in entertainment business and news and music, and then there's other people that handle like film and TV and all that. But really what it is like trying to make sure that we're taking care of those people, but they're collaborating more and talking more and working on bigger stories together.
Dope. What was the journey like getting into LA Times?
Long.
Like, what did it take for you to land that?
Well, I would say, I took like I said, it's kind of this scenic route where, coming from being a staff writer there, I wanted to grow, and I wanted to maybe get like an editor job, and that's what I went out and did with OC Weekly, which is a smaller, they're not around anymore, unfortunately. Like they closed in 2019, but they were around for 25 years. The paper that I pretty much grew up reading, and they're like, they allowed me to become an editor for the music section, and that gave me a whole lot of opportunity to have grown my experience, and then from there it just kept being like editor positions that allowed me to like test myself and like help build out certain elements that the publications I work with like really benefited from. So that kind of stuff like really came around to when they asked me at the LA Times if they asked me if I wanted the job, which is like goes, like I said, from somebody who applied for an internship there in college and didn't get it, then I went back, and applied again later for a fellowship, which is how I got my staff writer job. So it just, it all builds on everything, but that's how I got in, and that's why I'm happy to be there again, is because I had to go through a lot of obstacles and different changes to learn how to do what I'm doing now.
That's amazing. Like, that's really dope. So, Sean, well, tell me, what is it like being an educator in a journalism? Or Sorry.
I know what the question is.
Hold on.
I got you, yeah.
Sean, what is it like being an educator and a journalist? And what is your preference? Do you have a preference?
Yeah, I don't know if it is not anything on your part. I don't know if I would categorize myself as a journalist. Because I think there's a lot of things that go into the craft of journalism that I just, in terms of I guess you could say my apprenticeship in writing hasn't included. But as a writer, and which I would just categorize myself as a writer and an educator, I love, because for me at least, writing, I'm always learning. So every time I write a new piece, every time I tackle something new, I'm learning more about my craft. And as an educator, there's so many students, and I'm not a writing educator, or I'm not teaching writing. I'm teaching design criticism, and I'm usually teaching design studio and architecture school. And so usually what I work on with students is how they're articulating design concepts, how they're talking about architecture, talking about their work, how they're expressing themselves or kind of ordering their ideas. I'll talk a lot about just how to structure an argument or structure an idea with the students. And I love that. I really thrive on working with students who are eager to learn.
That's beautiful.
Because I think I'm a student myself, and
we all
love
are,
having
man.
people to learn from. So
We all are.
Yeah.
And then speaking of which, so what would you guys both give advice to the younger journalists or people who are writing or who want to pursue it? What would you guys say?
I think for people that are coming up in it now, it's about being as multifaceted in your skill set as possible. I mean, we learned that, or we heard that coming up as like millennials. Essentially, you got to be able to do it all. But really, I think now it's not just like a suggestion. It's like you must know how to connect with people through visual mediums and through social media, and be able to create packages yourself. Because at one point or another, as you advance in your career, those skills are going to be like necessary for you to know how to do stuff, and there's going to be less and less of like we're going to teach you how to do this. It's like, no, you should know how to do it.
Awesome.
You know, just because we all have this availability of the same platforms and information. Like anything that we have here in the studio is in the biggest platform, podcasts in the country. Like it's all the same stuff. So give yourself an opportunity to get ahead of that and like learn the basics at least of every aspect you can. And look for story ideas in all different types of mediums. Like I said, social media like Twitter or TikTok, whatever, there's stories there that you can look at and dig through and find, and like maybe the rest of the country might be talking about a group of things that are on everyone's mind, but you can go and find something.
Have your niche.
Have a niche and dig into it
and do it. Love it. Yourself?
Yeah, I think. I mean, on the niche point, I 100% agree, because my ambition hasn't been to be an architecture writer, but I have 10 years of time in architecture, so my strategy is always to show what I can do in writing through architecture.
Right.
And for me, that was much, I don't want to say easier, but that provided a clear path to create space for myself in writing. And I would say, depending on what form, like I totally agree. Like if it's journalism that someone wants to pursue, then I think reading journalism and reading essay collections.
So basically, just figure out what you love, right? What is your niche in what it is that you're doing, and then apply yourself to that. Basically that. You guys heard that, okay? Last thing, I need you guys' social media. Please drop it now.
So my Twitter is njacksonjourno, so that's at NJACKSONJOURNO, and my Instagram is at Naturodamus, so NATRODAMUS.
Thank you, yourself, Mr. Sean. Please.
My Instagram and Twitter is Sean J Joyner. So SeanJoyner. Just one word.
But thank you guys so flippin' much for coming through and taking the time to be with us here today. It is your girl, Kayla Ashe. And, you guys, I didn't even do my intro, but here's the outro. We love you here at 90220. Bye.
Thanks.